because of wolves and other predators have been my life story and my career. I worked for the federal government for 33 years. I was a supervisor for the western half of Montana. So I've been a one-man office working out of a garage in East Helena, Montana most of my career. Almost all my work is in the field, so I'm not a pencil-pushing bureaucrat, and I hated that part when I had to come back and write my reports. I've done a lot of this work. I was a taxidermist for 52 years. I put up furs for the fur industry for kind of as a part-time hobby, so I've skinned 10,000 coyotes in my life, hundreds of wolves, hundreds of bears. Blood and guts has been my story. Ranchers used to joke when I drove into town, they knew something died because they saw me going somewhere. So I've done an awful lot of this, cutting animals open, trying to figure out what happened to them. So how many of you have had anybody just do a presentation like this? I mean, we're just tell you what we do in the field, if any of you had those kind. Then you'll know what Colorado Parks and Wildlife or any of the field people are doing. All right. So anyhow, push the wrong button. Purpose mainly, all our work was to determine how livestock died, decide if predators were the problem or some other problem was the issue, and if it was livestock damage, how we were going to react to that, whether we had to manage wolves or support compensation payments. So really important to me, and it is yet to this day, it's you got to get it right. You got to know what you're doing. And the only way you get that experience is working in the field day in and day out. It's kind of like brain surgery. Do you go to the doctor who does it once a year, or do you go to the guy that does it every week? And I had to really pay attention to detail, and you had to be unbiased. This stuff is like crime scene investigations. You don't go in with a predetermined outcome. You go in, and my job always was collect evidence, look at what the situation was. Almost always it was a dead animal of some sort: cow, calf, sheep, lamb, horses, llamas, you name it. And I always cordially invited the ranchers to accompany me, look over my shoulder, and ask questions. So it wasn't me just coming in and doing my thing. I wanted people to see what I was doing and understand, and we got into a lot of debates a lot of times because there'd be disagreements on what I thought was going on versus what those folks thought. So it's important to people who are doing the livestock investigations to be aware that most livestock does not die from predation, which means if you're going to be a livestock depredation investigator, you have to be familiar somewhat with all of the diseases livestock can get, and the respiratory problems, disease problems. And back in the day, I don't know what they do nowadays, but when it was not predators and there was a dead animal, and it's sort of like, well, I don't raise sick livestock. What are you telling me then? Well, how did it die? I used to ask them, can I cut it open? Can I go inside? I always ask their permission, especially if it's a horse or something, you know, something that was meaningful to them that they didn't want you cutting on. But very often that's what we did is I would skin the animal out, and then we'd do a further necropsy when there were no bite wounds. And sometimes we could get to what the issue was. So I never tried to sell myself off that way. This is self-reported information from the National Ag Statistical Reporting Service. This is reported by ranchers when they do these 5-year questionnaires. And again, just point out that the main predators in the U.S. are coyotes and domestic dogs. And then you can see down lower are the other predators. And then it also ranks how livestock folks, how they introduce the diseases that they deal with. And so you can see how some of them rank out. And that's somewhat similar every 5 years, even though the numbers change, the trends are about the same. Same with sheep. Again, coyotes number one, dogs right up there. Then the other predators rank out below them. I found this 1993 report. It's old, but it was on calf deaths in Colorado. And in that study, again, you can see how things ranked out. In my work, when I was up in Montana, how many of you have had cattle with ulcers that have died from ulcers? It's not talked about much, but a lot of the calves and yearlings that I examined that never had a mark on them had ulcers that broke open, created a peritonitis, and killed them. And that was a lot of times lowered the pressure when the rancher would get mad at me and said, "Well, God damn it, something killed that." And when we cut in and see that inside and all that inflammation, it convinced them that, yeah, that's what was the problem. And so when we're doing these investigations, when you have wolves or other predators on the landscape, there's certain times of the year when elk and deer are easy to kill, and then when the fawns and calves get some size on them and they get older and they're able to run faster, wild game often gets less easy to obtain, and the predators a lot of times tend to focus on slow-moving livestock. So it's not uncommon. Usually August, September, October is often when wolves especially can be a problem for livestock. So all of my work was a one-man operation, and I had nobody telling me when I could go and when I didn't go. So when I got a call, if it was at midnight, I went. I drive 2 hours in the dark, use airplane landing light, spotlight, headlamps, but it's really important if you're going to be this investigator, you got to get out there, because you all know that things will start rotting, scavengers start eating on them, start destroying the evidence, and that's critical to get there soon. Same with guard dogs. They got tired of eating kibbles and bits. They like fresh sheep meat, so very often the guard dogs were starting to eat the dead sheep, so I had to race the dogs to it too. I'm going to remind you, at the time that I was doing my work, by the time I retired in 2006, we had over 1,000 wolves on the landscape, and I was covering the states of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. So it keeps you hopping. And it doesn't keep you in a strong marriage either. I think almost all of us got divorced before this was over. And another thing, I will say, when you're a one-man operation, and I was federal and they had a pickup for me, I was on call 24 hours a day. I won't say that happens with the states anymore. A lot of times it's go home at Friday afternoon at 4, come back to work Monday. But I can guarantee you I kept journals of everything I've done my entire career since the mid-1970s. That's when predators did their thing. When I retired in 2006, I started getting calls from people saying, "You know, Carter, I miss you, man, because we just called Fish and Game and there's nobody there. Nobody answers the phone. They do Monday morning." Now, I don't know what Colorado's doing. And data is so important, because people question everything you do, what you saw, and you better be able to back up what you determined happened. And I put photos in red because there's no excuse today with cell phones, which we didn't have when I was doing the work. But I took zillions of pictures. Now you can take zillions and you can erase them all if they're of no use to you. But photo evidence is so important. And when people challenge you about something, you could pop up the pictures and go through it with them and back up why you made the determination you made. So early on, mid-1980s, wolves started getting into livestock up in Montana, and that's where I was based, and that's pretty much where any wolf calls were up along that northern tier counties in Montana. And so going through Livestock Association bulletin delivery methods, we figured that was the best way to get the word out to the sheep growers and wool growers and cattle growers and all the other associations. And ranchers kind of come up with, everybody seemed to be irrigating all the time, and so that's kind of what they recommended, was use irrigation tarps. But again, those are really important to throw them over the dead animal and even over the mud or any tracking material around the edges, so that, if a wolf, a bear, a lion had been there, we could see the tracks, and kept that scavenging down, and kept dogs from eating on it or any of the other scavengers. I call it the domino effect. It's when you screw up the investigation at the ground level, and everything you do following that's a screw up. And I've written books where you think you had a bear kill a sheep, but actually it was a bear feeding on the udder of a sheep. And when you skinned the sheep out, there was nothing there that had killed it. But then you're trying to solve the rancher's problem. He had blue bag in his sheep, and you're out trying to snare a bear that may or may not have been there, because sometimes it wasn't a bear, it was a skunk or small scavengers. Point being, it was really embarrassing when you're out chasing for something that didn't exist in the first place. Another reason to get it right the first time. But I may forget to say it, but everything when I was working was based on trust. Tried not to keep anything secret from anybody, encouraged people to look over my shoulder, be there, and share what I was finding, and try to convince and back up what I was saying by letting others challenge me, question me, or look at the animal and convince me that I was missing something. And I wasn't always right. And again, full assortment of utensils to take along, to be out there. Early on, when we first were looking at dead livestock, when I went to work for Wildlife Services, often somebody would kick the dead animal with a boot and say, "Hey, coyote, put the plane up tomorrow." When you start dealing with wolves, people wanted, the reason you didn't skin out that back leg is because you knew damn well there was a tooth mark there. So I started skinning out everything, horses, cattle, sheep, skin them out down to the hooves. That way there's nothing hiding that you could left under the skin that might have been meaning you was covering up for the varmint. Things we didn't use so much then, as they're beautiful now, is having these cordless clippers to be able to shave off the hair and look closer at wounds. And these trail cameras, I love them. Man, you can, if I had those 25, 30 years ago, man, I could have solved a lot of problems overnight, where it took a lot of footwork and guesswork. Another thing I took with me that helped is I always carried some plaster casts of footprints. Many times I get in a debate with somebody, well, I got the wolf track and it's right out here in the mud, and I go out and look and I go, that ain't wolf, that's a dog. Bullshit. And then I go get my wolf track out of my truck and hold through it, and I go, holy crap. Sometimes it takes that. And same way when we're talking about what a predator does to an animal, sometimes you have to bring the graphics and tell them, we're going to be looking for the grape jelly and the strawberry jelly. And when they see what kind of damage predator wounds cause, it helps people get on the same wavelength with you. Okay, and this slide is mainly to show you that back in the day, again, I don't know if people do it, but when I do a necropsy and somebody called bullshit on me, I said, if you'll take your loader and put that in my truck, I'll take it to your vet. And I used to do a lot of that. And If you weren't convinced in the field of what happened, take it to a veterinarian who they trusted and let them look at the animal, and hopefully I was right and hopefully they'd back up what I was saying. But that's what we did informally back in the day. Again, I don't know if they can do that anymore. Tooth marks, you know, you hear a lot about tooth marks and spacing. I always show this to remind people. They say, well, the bites were 2 inches apart. It had to be a wolf. If you look at adult lions, adult bears, adult wolves, all about 2 inches. And when they're biting on hide that stretches and moves around, it's pretty hard to come up with a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch difference. But what I'm saying is 2-inch spacing will cover bear, lion, and wolf. It's still important information, but it's not necessarily the, the smoking gun. Again, just mentioning there's all kinds of ways that these livestock die, as you all well know. And I try to remind people that this should be some form of forensic science and crime scene investigation. You're taking it one step at a time to see what happened out there and lead us to a conclusion we're going to be dealing with when we have a solution. Again, some of this is probably elementary to all you guys and gals, so I'm not trying to talk down to anybody, but a lot of you know, and I'll tell you from experience, when a calf has been killed and taken and consumed or drug off, taken away, very often you show up in the morning and they tell you that something's going on. Watch the old mother cow. Very often she'll go out and sniff. If you just leave her alone, she'll sniff that spot. You go out there, there's blood, there's some bone fragments, and when they're that traumatized and their calf's disappeared overnight, there's predation going on. You just got to figure out who's the culprit. But again, working off animal behaviors and tight bag cows, restlessness, whether they're settled or not, all tells you that there could be predators that then bothering them. Struggle site, I use this as an example to express what I'm saying. It's a winter scene, but same way it can happen in the summer is that when predation happens, there's often a scuffle, and some of these large prey, including cattle or sheep, there is a battle that goes on, taking them down, and finding those sites is all good evidence. Another thing I learned over the years is where livestock die and how they die. Their position on the ground. Very often and we're going to be talking mainly or focusing on wolves. Wolves chase their prey, and very often when they take down livestock, it's going to be cornered somewhere. It's going to be dead in a fence corner, it's going to be in a ditch, it's going to be up a ravine or coulee, or it's going to be in a tangle of downfall timber. That's all red flags to me that this is not normal. That animal wouldn't be in that position if it just went to die. Same way when you got cattle that are sick and fevered, a lot of times they end up dying near water sources. So there's all these things you just get in your head that, okay, this is a red flag, but when you got a cow or something laying out there on the prairie right along the edge of the cow trail with its feet straight out, not so much. Often when livestock are wounded, and this is a wolf attack, these stock are traumatized. They're not directly killed, so they lay down. Their muscles are torn in their legs. And very often cattle will go into what I call the sternal position. They just lay down the same way they rest because they're in shock. And when they die, a lot of times their head goes down, and you'll find them laying sternally with their head down in the morning dead. That's a red flag that this is probably some kind of a predation issue. Not always, but very often. And typical looking for blood splatters, can't hardly see it here, but blood trail if the animal's fresh and moved or drugged or chased around and wounded. There's going to be a lot of splattering and fresh blood on the ground. And of course, the investigators got to be familiar with tracks. When I was up in Montana, it could be a grizzly bear, or it could be a black bear. And you go by what tracks you can come up with and the claws, how far the grizzly claws extend out beyond the toes, sometimes 3-4 inches, where black bear claws are tighter. And then you're all familiar with mountain lions. We'll talk a little more about them too. And then wolf tracks, 5 by 3.5, 5 by 4 inches. Most of your canines have oval tracks. They're longer than they are wide. And a lot of domestic dogs, if you see them leave tracks, their tracks are more round than lengthy. So when I get to a dead livestock site, rather than rushing in and looking at the dead animal carcass, always try to get people to stay back, no spitting and chewing and beer cans, and keep the dogs in the truck, or don't let the dogs run around. And I used to just check all the easy tracking areas and corridors that predators could use. And again, didn't necessarily mean any one species was guilty, but it gives me an idea. Oh yeah, a bear come down the trail, or a wolf track, or whatever. And again, that's all part of the evidence that you're looking for. And of course, scat, recognizing wolf scat from domestic dogs, for instance. Wolf crap smells horrible, which I think is great, because dog crap from dog food is worse, in my opinion. So I do give them the sniff test, break them open, see what kind of animal left the deposit. Try not to be sarcastic, but when people are talking about loss of a lot of livestock, tell me 30, 40, 50, 60 head are missing, you gotta think about 18-wheeler tracks too, because if you read currently in this country, rustling is still alive and well. And in some parts of the country, you get people who go in and kill stock and take the quarters off, sometimes butcher the whole thing. Over in Washington, they were butchering entire stock and throwing them in the river and letting the carcass float away. And the neighbors would report it. But again, you got to keep your mind open to all possibilities. Same thing with stillborn calves, looking at their feet, trying to examine their lungs, make sure that they ever got up before something fed on them. When I was working up in the state of Washington, I was helping collar wolves in this particular ranch, and they called me over that morning. They had this calf laying down in the ditch here. But you can see the skid marks. The logging truck took that one out. But they wanted me to necropsy it anyway, just to be sure. But yeah, that one was struck by a vehicle. This one here I could write a book about. This was a horse up in, I believe this was in northern Idaho, Weehite area. But anyhow, this was determined to be a wolf kill by Wildlife Services trapper, and by the owner of the horse happened to be the ex-game warden, got really touchy, and then anyway, people called up, said, Carter, you deal with it. And I was retired. The bottom line, you look at the horse, it hadn't been shoed, its hooves were terrible. This alleged attack by wolves, you can see small animals ate the skin off the head. There were 8 other horses in this pen with these light wires. I asked them, what were the other 8 doing? Where'd they go? Well, they were eating hay at the other side of the pen. Well, you ain't gonna have a wolf go in there and tear a horse apart and have about 8 of them standing there while it's happening. Bottom line, after asking people, let's be honest, well, the horse had depression, the horse was older in the hills, and they finally admitted, yeah, I think it died. But these are the kind of disputes you get into, and spend a lifetime doing those kind of things. There's a horse in Washington just a year or 2 ago, you can't tell it, but them are all wolf tracks. It turns out nobody knew whose horse it was. It was on the wrong property, and all the ID was gone. The wolves are eating it, but how do you control the problem wolves when they're eating somebody else's dead horse that they drug out and dumped in your back field? I think all of you are familiar that horses have all kinds of collisions, so looked at a lot of horses that had wire cuts, impaled on irrigation pipes, ran into steel posts, trees. And in my career, 33 years, I have never confirmed a horse yet that wolves killed. They love to eat them though. Coyotes love to eat them. Horse meat is probably the primo food. But all these wounds on these horses that I've looked at always turn out to be usually a collision or kicked by another horse or something. So don't anticipate you're probably going to have problems with wolves killing your horses. Here's another one. I cut out a lot of slides today, but anyway, I had this mysterious colt death too. So I took Belle into the vet in Helena, Montana, and they determined the stud horse had kicked it. But it had these bloody wounds, and everybody jumped to conclusions that wolves must have done it. So the vet's the one who called the shots on that one. And all livestock folks are familiar with all kinds of prolapse stuff. Prolapse will make your blood pressure go up and your heart skip a beat, because very often it mimics something that a predator may have done, which means you got to get your hands on these animals and take a closer look and make sure that these wounds weren't caused by a predator, but just an unfortunate prolapse. Lightning strikes, that probably hits home right now. I read about your 200s in Colorado that were lost. But yeah, sometimes you get groups of animals dead out in the field. Again, predators usually will single out a single animal, and you find multiple animals laying out in the middle of a field or in a group somewhere. Red flag goes off. That's probably not predation, it's something else. Snake bite. I didn't have any good livestock pictures, but snakes sometimes bite animals that cause a lot of swelling and foot or leg injuries. I've seen some of that up in Northeast Washington, and people start pointing fingers. Did the environmentalists do it, or well, the rancher did it himself, and oh, it's the hunter's done it, and so everybody's in a big fight over who's to blame. But when you're looking at a dead animal and there's wounds, that horse took a load of buckshot in the face. So got to keep an open mind, unbiased, and just see where the evidence leads you. I'm no specialist on larkspur, but I know it takes a whack out of people, and one of the guys I work with a lot up in Canada, he was taking care of 4,600 cow-calf pairs, and I think all of you know that larkspur can sneak up on you and cause some deaths. But again, there's not going to be tooth marks and predator injuries involved. Got to express now, I don't always have the answers. You never always come up with a nice, simple conclusion. And I hear people talk about, well, they went out and they looked and they wouldn't tell us what killed it or how it died. But I always kept what I call nowadays cold case file. If I had a calf that was dead, I wasn't sure about it, did my investigation. A lot of times, again, by the position, what's going on in that particular area, the way it's been fed on, a whole lot of things, I can kind of guess that, I think this is scavenging. But I also put that in a file, because if there's a dead calf or a dead sheep there 3 days later and a wolf done it, when I was dealing with Defenders of Wildlife, I would call them up and said, we had an animal we couldn't tell 3 days before. I recommend paying those guys for that one too, and back in the days, Defenders never questioned me. They said, if you say so, we'll pay them. So what the pattern is, if the predation happened, it'll probably happen again, and you might get a better critter to look at. Here's another one that can get you into all kinds of arguments, and I see a lot of this still going on today, in my opinion. But with predation, there's normally a lot of hemorrhage. And a lot of the guys that I've worked with over the years, and we've done a lot of it, we call them no-brainers. When predators attack and kill an animal, it's traumatic. And there's a lot of crushed muscle and a lot of hemorrhage under the skin. But you also get into the fancy word, post-mortem hypostasis. And if you look at an animal that just dies and lays in a field for 2-3 days, and this goes from human bodies into livestock, if you tip them over, skin them out and look at the bottom side, you're gonna see all kinds of reddening. And that's just capillary breakdown, it's decomposition, it's things that happen. And you can see that it's nothing like hemorrhage, where you had blood pressure and the blood pumped out into the skin and into the surrounding flesh. But a lot of people point to that, and we've gotten some pretty heated arguments over the years where, by God, that's a bite wound. Well, no, it's not a bite wound.
How quickly can that happen?
What's that?
Hemostasis happen?
Quick, the hotter, the sooner. With heat, really hot days, just a matter of hours, and you're gonna see that reddening. And a lot of times there'll be gas bubbles under there too. And again, when you skin this animal out, you look at the skin too, because when there's been bite wounds, these wounds are bruises, and they go into the skin and the hide on the top, right over the bite. So if I had the skin with that animal right there, where these main attack points are, you can see all that bloody bruising right into the fresh skin. You won't see that so much with this stuff. It's just a kind of a coloring.
With one like that, do you run into like a bullet wound would look very similar? Like say that animal took a bullet, you get that same...
You're gonna look like that.
Yeah, and then if the wolf ate with a bullet, could you tell or?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you gotta have investigators get there. And that's often a problem, is the guy didn't get here for 3 days. I've heard stories in New Mexico and Arizona, didn't get here for 8 or 9 days. That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to have people respond fast. But I got a picture of a bullet wound here coming up, I think. There you go. But yeah, where you're gonna have a gunshot wound, it's gonna be all gutted out, elk and deer and things. It ain't pretty. So, wolves to last, to remind you of the other predators out there. When I first went to work for Wildlife Services in 1975 in Montana, my first job was to trap and relocate golden eagles that kill sheep. My first summer, never done it before, I caught 149 golden eagles out of one township. They were migrating through. I'm an eagle expert. We had to band all them and truck them. We took some to Pawnee grasslands in Colorado, some up to Sealy Swan Valley in northwest Montana, and the other released at Soda Butte in the Lamar Valley in Yellowstone. The golden eagle, if you have livestock predation, it's going to be them, because they've got these powerful, strong feet, feathered down to their toes. Comparison here, bald eagles, you'll see them feeding on livestock, but I would bet my bottom dollar that seldom does a bald eagle attack and kill livestock, because they've got more hawk-like feet. They kill ducks, they'll kill fish and things like that. But these golden eagles, they're powerful, and they're built, and they're a killing machine if they decide to. And you all seen, if you want to know the fancy term, slicing a mute is an eagle taking a crap. If you look at dead carcasses out in the field, you'll see those white streaks on the animal or on the ground. It tells you eagle's been there visiting. Doesn't necessarily mean they killed it or not. Now, I don't have any action pictures, but these eagles, if you go on the internet, you can see they're using golden eagles to hunt wolves in Mongolia and that. And them eagles just nail them wolves and kill them like nothing. And these were some pictures taken by Wildlife Services in another state, but eagles will fly tandem. One rides the antelope till it falls off, and then the next one hits it. And those antelopes, sometimes several, will go over and lean in a fence, and just stand there and bleed to death. So they have no trouble killing mule deer and antelope and small livestock. Where I was working in Dillon, Montana at the time, we had a resident family of eagles, and you could climb up to their nest. It was plumb full of lamb quarters too, which is kind of a giveaway. They were carting lambs off. Then with lambs, especially the eagles, very often punctured them through the head. A lot of times it was because the lambs, they were range lambing, and the lambs were cold and just curled up, and the eagle would just land next to them, walk over, and put the talons to them. And notice those talons on golden are probably 2.5, 3 inches long, and they can go right into the brain or into major blood vessels and kill them. Another thing with, if you have the skin and look at it real close, you can often see on the skin the triangle marks where the talon up at the base is 3-sided, and it'll leave those 3 marks, kind of like a broadhead going into an animal. That's how eagles eat lambs. They just snip them off. A lot of times all you find is just the spine out there, and then see a lot of hemorrhage and hemorrhage wounds, and all that profuse bleeding. You know something killed it. Coyote predation, good share of our work. Always had to deal with them. Coyotes are pretty precision surgeons. Most of the time with lambs, they attack them right there in that neck location, almost 99% of the time. Get a hold of them, hang on to them. That bite might not look all that bad, but maybe there's another one. You'll see the blood on the neck sometimes you won't. But when you skin that hide back where that coyote bit that lamb, tremendous amount of grape jelly and strawberry jelly. If you take home nothing else today, think about that when you're looking at dead livestock. If you see this kind of stuff going on when they start skinning them, you know you got a predator problem of some kind. Coyote bites, they're just not as damaging as a bear, a wolf, or a lion does. Their teeth are finer, don't leave sometimes these big massive bite wounds, and they're just more of a pink discoloration. Again, you can look at the spacing, but putting it all together, it's not too hard to conclude when a coyote kills something. Dogs, again, #2 predator in the United States. If you live way out somewhere, you think, well, this sounds like BS again, you know, dogs, you can't blame them. But so when I was in Montana, the sheep losses around the edge of town were far greater than the guy with the pneumatic sheep band. The people let their dogs out and they go hit a little band of sheep on the edge of town and get in the corrals, and sometimes all the sheep are dead or wounded. And mutilation, because dogs are very unskilled at killing whatever they attack, whether it's cattle or sheep. It's more of bite them wherever you can get a hold of them. It's kind of a game. Sheep especially, they're tore to shreds, and a lot of times you'll find the sheep, as I say, when they've been chased, you'll find them crawling under buildings, board piles, anywhere to just try and get away, and the dogs are ripping at their back end. And again, it's important to really look and measure the tracks around a situation like this. Dog tracks are more rounded. Your canines, wild canines, wolf, coyote, and fox all have more elongated footprints. A friend of mine who does a lot of investigations up northeast Washington, they had kind of an ongoing debate up there too about whether wolves did something, and so he immediately put up a trail camera, which are really cool. Put them up as quick as you decide to leave the scene after you do the investigation, put up the trail camera. Very often the perpetrator will be there that night. I've skinned out many of the early calves up in Montana, and instead of scaring the wolves away, they came and ate the whole thing in a day or two. I used to leave the carcass out because I wanted to trap and put a collar on the wolves before I left the area. But anyhow, they solved there was a medical doctor's dog came down and was doing killing, harassing, and mutilation. Okay, mountain lion predation, again, knowing what their footprints look like. They have retractable claws, so you're not going to see their claw marks, which helps sort out a lot of debate over whether you're dealing with a wolf track or a lion track. And it's real cool with the lions, especially in their front feet. They have that distended toe. So besides retracted claws, you get a good track you can look at, you'll see that extended toe. It tells you the cat was there. And cat and scats, they're more segmented. A lot of these scats look very much like your house cat, except on a grander scale. And lions will bury scratch their scat under like domestic cats do. It should be backwards, because domestic cats come from the wild cats. So really the difference with lions is that they're more of an ambush kind of animal. So just when you're looking at the terrain where something happens, kind of give you an idea whether this is somewhere the wolves would be hunting. The wolves like that more open country to hunt. The lions, they'll hunt the rough country. But 99 times out of 100, the lion kill is going to be a throat bite or a neck bite. And they'll either bite through and absolutely splinter the spinal cord, or sometimes they'll just get a hold of the throat, hang on and lay down and just suffocate. But lions, generally speaking, focus on that throat and neck area. And I just throw in some pictures to drive home the point. Unique with lions, if you're out walking somewhere, they do often drag their kill, take it somewhere. And I've had that, this isn't my picture, but I have walked where I've seen a drag mark and followed it and seen where they killed a mule deer and stashed it.
Carter,
Yes, sir.
you got back scratches, pretty much line predation. I mean, if you got back scratches down the back of the steer or whatever.
Oh, yeah. You're about a slide ahead of me. So yeah, so the lions, they'll use anything and everything to bury their prey. They'll scratch it under rocks and straw. That's what you're asking. Yes, that's another thing you look for, is that where the lion hooks their prey. And this is an Idaho Fish and Game picture on an elk. I don't have one for livestock, because I've looked at very few lion kills over the years. If you got sheep and goats, that's what the lions love, and llamas. But yes, that's what you're talking about. Yes, for that deer or elk got hooked. And just another example of burial. Wintertime, might just use a pile of snow and rake it over. But it's pretty indicative of a lion kill. If you got goats and sheep, I picked this goat picture because two key things. Very often the lions, when they kill something like a sheep or goat, they go in under the front leg and they'll eat the giblets, I call them, the heart, lung, and liver. They'll take them out right through an opening right here. And to get to that, open that up, if you come up on a lot of these lion kills on goats, it looks like somebody took a clipper and clipped the hair. And it's them using their teeth, and they're just plucking the hair off the skin to get down to the flesh to open it up. So again, those are key things to look for, is the hair clippings. Bear predation, again, knowing the tracks, whether you're dealing with a black bear or grizzly bear, and you all seen a lot of bear poop, I'm sure, over the years, and it could have just about anything in it. When they're into eating a lot of livestock, though, they won't have so many berries. It'll be more tarry and rich. Drive home point, think about mountain lions, neck bites, coyotes, neck bites. These bears almost always bite over the top of the body. They attack over so I call it a dorsal attack. They anywhere from the back of the neck all the way down the lumbar region. For 16 years, I worked with problem grizzlies in Montana. And when you see a 1,200-pound Hereford cow killed by a grizzly, you're a believer that there's only one thing that could have done that. God only knows, but I think it's just the way they rear up and they come down on their prey. And I can't, couldn't get a good picture. This is the best drawing I could find. But here's a couple examples I got off the internet. But see, here's a bear over the top, and here's a bear fighting that critter there over the top. And with few exceptions, there's a sheep that was killed by a grizzly. This is one I checked out. You can see the big bite wounds out of the top of that sheep. And when a bear kills them and eats them, it reminds you of a grenade blown off inside of the sheep. Just, they're a mess. There's me when I was about 50 years younger. But anyway, there's a calf or yearling, big chunk bit out of it. That was a grizzly kill. And then here's one of those big, full-size, 1,000-pound cow. Bit over the top of the head, over the eyeballs, and great big deep wounds in the neck. And grizzlies can kill them, believe me. And then just again, it don't mean bears killed something, but bear feeding, when you come up on a carcass that's been out a few days and you see it turned inside out, like you took your socks off and peeled them down to your toes, you know you got a bear eating on it at least.
Do black bears do that in addition to grizzly bears?
Yeah. When you're grizzly country, that's when you...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you fold it up like a pretty little present.
Yes. Over your shoulder when you know what you're dealing with. So what everybody came for the big show today is talk about wolves. I made this little chart. From 1987 to 2015, the federal government was in charge of wolves. About 2011 to 2017 is when the delisting happened. 2011 for Idaho, Montana, 2017, I believe, for Wyoming. But you can just look at these are the animals that were killed during that time period. I worked up until 2006. But you can just see on the average what the targeted species were. Again, it was mostly sheep at the time. Nowadays, I think the cattle numbers have increased significantly because a lot of the areas the wolves expanded into aren't sheep country anymore. So the first thing that's unfortunate, we've dealt with a lot of times, is guard dogs with sheep. Most sheep men have guard dogs. They're really out there designed to warn the sheep herders. They're not put out there to fight with wolves. It's a losing fight if they do get into it with them. So if you got good guard dogs with a herder backup, the dog barks, the herder goes out and deals with the wolves, not the dog. But several times guard dogs have took it upon themselves to take on the wolves, and the outcome is bad almost every single time. That dog's name was Sam, and we even helped this producer up here in Challis, Idaho. We gave the dog a burial and put up a marker for it after we were done. But he chased the wolves probably a quarter mile up the road from the sheep pens, and wolves ambushed him. And if you think wolves don't do a job with a dog, I've necropsied lots of dogs, and they're bit from the tip of their nose to the tip of their tail and everywhere in between, and it's just one massive hemorrhage, broken ribs, punctured heart. Wolves do a job on them. And there's just another example why, you know, you might drive up on that dog and think, oh, some hunter just put a bullet in our dog. But no, that's the dog with the skin off. A lot you'll miss if you don't skin these animals. And I was a shepherd, also in Idaho, lost his best guard dog during the night. This is a picture from inside Yellowstone National Park. That's a wolf that was killed by other wolves. To show you, they do the same exact thing to their own when they're having territorial disputes. So if you haven't got the message by now, if you got dogs in wolf country, keep them under your control, and don't take for granted, well, I've always let my dog run, or always let my dog do this. If you've got wolves and you love your dog, you wouldn't let your dog go do that anymore. I'd be with him all the time. So typical predation by wolves, you've got those neck wounds. You got the neck wounds, kind of like a coyote, kind of like a bear, kind of like a mountain lion. But when you skin out the back end of the sheep, wolves often catch the sheep like they do the cattle. They go for the rear hamstring area. So when you get that combination of that severe bite wounds in the rear end, along with the throat, you're starting to think wolf. And I wanted to show this slide to you. This was in Idaho. There were several dead sheep, and they look like there's not a mark on them. I point out this is the same sheep. When you start skinning, there's that hind quarter, hind leg, all ripped to shreds. You skin back the neck, and there's all the grape jelly up there. That was another classic wolf attack. But again, the point being, necropsies, you've got to do them. You've got to skin these animals out to know for sure what you're dealing with. And I've skinned out hundreds of dead cattle and sheep, mostly yearlings and calves. But with wolves, I make up my point right now, is wolves 99 and 9/10% of the time on beef cattle will attack under the front legs, in the groin, and down the back of the legs. So if you got any kind of fresh animal to examine, and wolves did it, those wounds are going to be there almost exclusively every single time. It's how wolves attack. Why they attack like that, it's my belief that when you have cattle and they're big and round, and you can't get a hold of them very easy, it's kind of like when you're throwing a calf. You get a hold of some skin and you tip them and throw them down. Well, the wolves go up and they get hold of that loose skin, and that's where they can initially get a hold of them, and that's where they hang on. And if there's more than one wolf, the others will start piling in and get a hold of the hind quarters.
So we have half a carcass, the front half, that it has eaten up underarms. That's fairly indicative.
Yep, especially if it's that grape strawberry jelly. Because these animals are alive when they're bitten and have blood pressure, and they're just traumatized, and the muscles are crushed until they go down.
And again, if the back is all torn up too, that's more likely.
That's the better part to want to get your hands on. But again, doing this as long as I have, and there's an investigator up in Northeast Washington, friend of mine, and then trapper in Idaho, who's rest his soul now, he's gone. But between the three of us, we call them no-brainers. We can almost get out of your truck, walk over and say that's a wolf kill before you even do anything else. This is the first beef animal attacked in the state of Montana when I was working up there. Again, attack under the back legs, down the hind leg. That animal's still alive. That picture got all the way to the state house, and a lot of politics involved. But again, start showing you these hind quarter bites. Not always are wolves successful in killing beef animals. If they're disturbed or something goes wrong, the wolf might be inexperienced, or people show up, they can wound them. But there are very few animals out there that do that kind of damage other than a wolf. Again, handy example again of the hair clipper. When you see a walking animal, take out's a wound, put a rope on it, get it caught, and you can use a clipper and shave. And you can see often where there's the attack points, tooth marks, or scrapes where something got a hold of it and didn't kill her. Some more pictures. These are from Northeast Washington of wounded calves. And you all know that when they're bit that bad, you got to kill them. There's no way to, veterinarians can save animals that are that severely injured. And there's that dorsal position I talk about again. It's not uncommon sometimes to have the tail, rectum, genital area attacked, and for some unknown reason they don't get them killed. But you'll find an animal out there laying there looking like that. And that's, or say some people might confuse prolapses with bite wounds, but not really. And then very often if that animal is located for a day or two, it'll be dead, just kind of humped over. So then I just threw in, I wasn't involved in deer and elk damage investigations, but I got these from my buddy Doug Smith in Yellowstone, just to show you. Here they're after an elk, notice going for the hamstring, hindquarters. Notice here, one biting in the neck, but here's one got it under the front legs. Here's 2 or 3, 4 of them going for the hindquarters. Here's another example of a bull elk. There's one got it under the front legs, 2 biting the hindquarters. And the same thing, here's a bison in Yellowstone. These are all taken from a plane. Again, you can see they're not fighting the front end of that bison, they're going after the rear section. And if that animal, if you end up doing a necropsy, you'll see it's bit under the legs and down the hindquarters. I tell you, I did that taxidermy mount for the Montana wool growers about 30 years ago. I put a set of badger teeth in the lamb, and in this case, the lamb won, I think. That's it in a shell. And I have an excellent answer. When I was working in Northwood. Oh, yes, sir.
Repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. He wants to know about wolves suppressing coyote populations or coyote numbers. When I was first working in northwest Montana, when the first wolves showed up, and you had this individual pack here and an individual pack there, I called it supplementary feeding. Wolves would kill something, eat their portion, go off on a meat drunk and sleep it off somewhere, and the coyotes would swarm in and eat it. I was with Defenders of Wildlife person at the time up there on one of these situations, and I took them for a night drive and went howling that night. Wolves had killed a calf. We howled an estimated over 100 coyotes we howled up that night in probably a 5-mile radius of where that wolf pack was living. So I say when wolves aren't crowding coyotes, coyotes can thrive around them. But then when they put the wolves in Yellowstone National Park initially, and you have 7 to 10 packs grow fairly quickly inside the park, they sandwich the coyotes in. And Bob Crabtree, a researcher, determined that the population of coyotes diminished by as much as 50%. And I think it's because there were wolves everywhere, and the coyotes, most of them I think were naive too. They didn't know any better. They'd never dealt with a big dog on the block. So yeah, wolves did a job on them. And then since then, the coyote population has come back up once they learned to live with wolves. Yes, sir. It should always be no dead livestock, no dead wolves.
Absolutely. That's what I was getting at.
And that's been my answer over and over, where wolves are a reality, wolves are here, wolves are coming, according to the politics I read in the newspaper. So if people don't take steps to mitigate the potential conflicts, there's going to be all kinds of wrecks. But speaking again, in my opinion, they're my dogs, they were my livestock. I guess I'll do what I have to do to minimize the risk to them if I really care about the animal. Like that in Colorado Parks and Wildlife tell you you're tainting the evidence or something, but the only other thing is, it's, you know, if you got an animal close to home, I would bring it close to home and keep it covered and keep the dogs away and put it in the shade and things like that. But to me, if you're going to have a wolf management program, the investigators got to, I mean, I have no control over that, but you've got to get out there. You can't wait. You can't let a holiday, a family vacation or anything interfere with that. Or you better have a backup to go with, take your place. Because to me, it's inexcusable the agency lets the evidence get lost. But I'm telling you, if you got good carcasses and you find them soon enough and the investigator gets out there promptly, this should not be some rocket science, you know, that we can't tell, we don't know. With fresh carcass, you can know and you can tell. That's what I learned. Well, you get into ownership, possession, messing with people's private livestock, take pictures. That's, to me, the biggest thing you can do is just take pictures close up and mark them, and where you can explain to somebody this is a close up of the legs or something. But I wouldn't encourage anybody to do too many things outside your responsibility or permission. Yeah, it'll move a pack around, but their territory, I mean, the Fish and Game, if you got collars on them, you kind of know they've got a 200 square mile area. They're not going to go outside of it, but they can certainly shift from your neighborhood, go 10 miles down to another watershed and hole up down there if there's less human activity. And up in our country, Idaho, you can kill 500 wolves apiece if you want. So they're getting a lot of gunfire directed at them up in our area too. So, but if you got livestock predation going on and you got cattle pretty remote in the backcountry, hunting season probably isn't going to move them out of range of hitting those cattle. If they're attuned to doing that, they're going to probably keep it up. Just trying to think back through. First of all, I mean, the evidence is going to be the same. If you're looking at calves killed 6 hours old, or in a short time period, you're going to see those lesser wounds on them compared to. But would wolves eat the evidence up? Certainly. I've seen bears eat wolf kills, and all. If it's unprotected and they can get at it, they'll eat them. I'm telling you, back in my day, I don't know what goes on today, but I used to get there 24 hours or less. And my purpose also was to determine the cause of death. It was wolves. My directive from the Fish and Wildlife Service, I was working for USDA, but they said priority was getting a collar on a wolf. You guys probably already have collars on the wolves you're talking about, but so I wanted to get there quick, get everybody to stay away. I left the carcass lay and set traps to get a wolf collared to determine, is there one wolf, a pair of wolves, do they have pups? In preparation for a control action, whatever that is. I call it spank and release. One of the first things we did was catch the wolves in foothold traps, put a collar on them, let them go. Sometimes that works. Very often it can. If you nip it. Here's the other thing I didn't say clearly today is prevention is so important with wolves. You've got to be ahead of it from the beginning. You get behind the 8 ball too far and you get too much of this learned behavior going. It's really hard to change them.
And how did
the collar with us led us to, the first step was collaring, and I called it spank and release. You handled the wolves, you caught them in a trap, you caught them right where the carcass was laying, you gave them a bad experience. Your first choice now, wolves, is to pack it up and move down the road or stay the hell out of this pasture. Very often that did work and could work.
So the operative part is the bad experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
So the initial step. But then up in Montana, all you know that step by step, we called it incremental, case by case. If things didn't work, take the next step. We did relocations. We caught approximately, as I recall from our records, 117 wolves. I trapped in foothold traps, sometimes with a helicopter, mostly with trapping, and we relocated them. We took them out of there and we took them into the wilderness. We had places we could go. We could go to the Forest Service remotely. We could fly them into a remote airstrip and we could release them. And initially we could take them up to Glacier Park and release them. We had those options. They got in trouble again, and a lot of them, if they left the relocated area and traveled, again, some of them got poached, some of them got shot by mistake. People didn't know what they were, of an animal with a collar chasing my cattle. I thought it was a damn dog and I shot it. So a lot of them relocations weren't successful. I group for Colorado, and I learned, and I believe it's good, relocation doesn't work very good. Simply because where do you take them? You're probably going to get in trouble If there were pups involved, the pups are gonna die. I mean, if you took puppies over and put them with their parents, relocated them somewhere, those parents don't care about their pups. They wanna find home. So they leave and the pups stay up there where you turn them loose, walk around for a week and tip over and die. So relocation was an option we had that I don't know, I guess maybe you don't have that option here.
Well, the $64 question for us right here is the Copper Creek plant was relocated basically right here. What do we do now?
Well, my guess is, without giving specifics, is there's gonna be some hard decisions made. If Colorado Parks and Wildlife does their homework and does their investigations, and you've got the data that says this is ongoing, then I think they're faced with some tough decisions, which I don't know what they're willing to do or gonna do, but. A true story, a few weeks ago, a writer from Colorado talked to me and said, kind of, Carter, they got these inconclusive blah, 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 and they just had this case and they don't know again. And I told that person, there's predation going on and you step it up, there's gonna be another one within a day or two or three. He called me up, Carter, bingo. So part of my answer too is stepping up observations, stepping up rancher awareness and agency awareness. When you got a deal and you suspect you got a pack of wolves living right close, and you got a nice healthy 400 or 500 pound calf just ending up dead every 3-4 days,
Yeah.
and the agency to step it up in that area and find that smoking gun, I call it, the fresh one. And that interview, I don't remember all I said, but in that interview, I referred to missing livestock in the years that I was doing these investigations in Montana. I never ever dealt with massive livestock loss. I never had a producer come to me at the end of the year and said, God, we're up 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 head. I mean, and those numbers seem to get bigger all the time in different states. And I sit at home on my couch, retired, going, damn it, I wish I could be there because this don't sound right. But I can't comprehend wolves killing 80 more head of cattle and I mean, they've eaten beef night and day, and I subscribe to, my belief is wolves don't kill for fun. I've just, most of the time, never seen it. They kill to eat. They risk their life killing some big animal. That's why they kill calves and yearlings almost all the time. Preferably, in my whole career, I think I've seen 3 adult cows or bred heifers that they killed. They went after the calves and the yearlings.
Well, as a CP,
And my wrote a report, anybody can get it. But all those cattle, I looked at 800 pictures that were sent to me. There were no bite wounds on any. Trail cameras were placed on a good share of those dead animals. There were a few coyote pictures and a few golden eagle photos. There was never a wolf picture taken. There was even a speculation there was 9 dogs running up there. All these cattle too died above 9,200 feet or higher. I made an educated assumption and guess that it was brisket disease or something like
It was
that.
vaccination, the lack of.
He didn't vaccinate for black leg. You're talking
Oh,
about lead.
see, I know. Yeah, I looked at all the,
Bad choice.
way back there, one of my first slides says, I can't always tell you what killed it, but I can tell you what didn't. And I looked at all those pictures and all the maps and all the emails and everything, but there was no evidence of a wolf there. There was no evidence a wolf did anything. And there was damn little evidence of even scavengers visiting those carcasses.
And the one